A new report is detailing how poorly all levels of government are doing it when it comes to addressing poverty in Canada. Food Banks Canada issued a first of its kind report card for all provincial and territorial governments on how it is addressing food insecurity, poverty, and production efforts. According to the report published on Tuesday, Canada overall received a D+ for its efforts. The report analyzed each government in 4 sections: the experience of poverty, poverty measures, material deprivation, that is standard of living, and legislative progress. Using a mix of government and public data and surveys, the organization was able to provide points per section that correspond to an overall grade. The goal of the report was to provide comparisons between provinces and territories and understand what policies are working and what aren't in Canada. The country received a D+ when it came to the experience of poverty, the report shows, with people feeling worse off financially compared to last year. Other factors for this section include people having to pay more than 30% of income on housing, trouble accessing healthcare, government support recipients saying rates are insufficient, and increasing income spent on fixed costs beyond housing. Canada received a C- for its poverty measures, which include the unemployment rate, food insecurity rate, and poverty rate. Inadequate and severe standards of living were measured in the material deprivation section, which had a grade of D for Canada. The legislative progress grade is whether the government took action over the past year to fix the above issues. The Canadian government received a D, according to the report. The report also finds nearly 7 million Canadians are struggling to put food on the table as the cost of living and housing crisis continues to bite. At least 2.8 million Canadians are living in poverty, which has been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and inflation, among other contributing factors. Food Banks Canada said in its report. In recent years, demand has risen sharply at food banks in Canada. A previous report from Food Banks Canada released last year showed an all-time high of nearly 1.5 million visits to food banks across the country in March 2022. In its new report, Food Bank Canada graded each jurisdiction based on experiences of poverty, measures of poverty, standard of living, and government legislation. Nova Scotia performed the worst for an F grade. Newfoundland and Labrador, Ontario, and New Brunswick get a D-, while Alberta and Saskatchewan received a D. British Columbia got a D+, and Manitoba, as well as Prince Edward Island, a C-. Quebec scored highest with a B-. The territories were marked incomplete due to lack of data collection. Food Banks Canada is urging all levels of government to take action, laying out a number of policy recommendations such as collaboration with Indigenous communities and developing a new program with an employment insurance that specifically supports older workers. The report said, while inflation is expected to decrease in the coming months, the government will need to continue to implement long-term solutions to address poverty and income inequality, including expanding accessible social support programs and investments in affordable housing and infrastructure.